And the more time goes, the more I see people rejecting the things of the Lord. And they don't want to hear, plug in their ears. They don't want to hear about church. They don't want to hear about God. I've experienced that more and more in the past few years. The spiritual blindness is just getting more and more deeper. But Jesus what is he doing? He's training his disciples. Training his disciples in what? In the knowledge of who he is. Imagine the disciples after now, he rebuked the winds and the sea and it became calm, and now the demoniacs and then the people are like, what in the world? And they're seeing the blindness of people. Can you just think what was happening to the disciples at that point? They probably wanted to scream at the guardians, say, man, why? Don't you see who Jesus is?
So let my life be the proof of your love. Let my love look like you and what you're made of.
But God is able to work through all no matter what. And then we find him from chapter 4 and following really all the way to chapter 12. Jesus is presented as the King of Kings. And as the King of Kings, he first of all teaches absolute righteousness, right? And that's the Sermon on the Mount, starting chapter 5, 6, and 7. And absolute righteousness. The King brings absolute teachings of righteousness. And then in chapter 8, we begin to see the King of Kings demonstrating his power over all that is fallen. Whether it's human beings, whether it's nature, whether it's demons, it doesn't matter. He is the King of the universe. And that's what we find. And of course, that should have a profound effect on the way we live. In every area of life, Jesus is King. And so that's what we find in this passage that we're going to be covering. Matthew chapter 8, and starting in verse 23. He has just, chapter 7, he finished the Sermon on the Mount, and he began to show his power, even over distance. And now he's going to show power over nature, and he's going to show power over all spiritual, especially demons. And that's what we find in this particular passage. Let me read it. Matthew chapter 8, starting in verse 23. When he got into the boat, his disciples followed him, and behold, there arose a great storm on the sea, so that the boat was being covered with the waves, but Jesus himself was asleep. And they came to him and woke him up, saying, "Save us, Lord, we are perishing." He said to them, "Why are you afraid, you men of little faith?" Then he got up and rebuked the winds and the sea, and it became perfectly calm. The men were amazed and said, "What kind of a man is this, that even the winds and the sea obey him?" When he came to the other side of the country, the Gadarenes, 2 men who were demon-possessed met him, and they were coming out of the tombs. They were so exceedingly violent that no one could pass by that way. And they cried out, saying, "What business do we have with each other, Son of God? Have you come to torment us before the time?" Now there was a herd of many swine feeding at a distance from them. The demons began to entreat him, saying, "If you are going to cast us out, send us into the herd of swine." And he said to them, "Go." And they came out and went into the swine. And the whole herd rushed down the steep bank into the sea and perished in the waters. The herdsmen ran away and went to the city and reported everything, including what had happened to the demoniacs. And behold, the whole city came out to meet him, and when they saw him, they implored him to leave their region. Amazing. Twice in my life, I've been involved in exorcism, and it is an ugly, ugly business. I will never, ever want to do that again. I may be called to do it again. I'd rather not. There's a feeling of profound disgust and vile sense of my soul being in touch directly with demons. It's awful, awful. But demons don't have to be extrovert. They don't have to be overt. They don't have to be dramatic. And we have to be aware of that. James chapter 3, right after Hebrews. James chapter 3, verse 13. When I get there. James chapter 3, starting in verse 13. This is very instructive for all of us. James chapter 3, verse 13. Who among you is wise and understanding? Let him show by his good behavior his deeds in the gentleness of wisdom. But if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your heart, do not be arrogant and so lie against the truth. This wisdom is not that which comes down from above, but it is earthly, natural, demonic. Wow. Demons don't have to show themselves in ugly, ugly ways. It can be through these ways of thinking that have nothing to do with trusting the Lord. Arrogance and selfish ambition. And in a way, we're powerless, kind of like the people were against the demoniacs, as we read in this story. So we have to raise the question of ourselves, how do we deal? Well, I guess first of all, are we aware of demonic activity? We may know it up here that there are demons, but are we aware? Are we sensitive enough to see this is demonic? And it takes that sensitivity to realize that, yeah, demons are real and that they are ever wanting to attack. So where are you in terms of satanic, demonic realities? Do you believe in demons? Are you concerned about your spiritual well-being? Because they're always attacking, right? Are you concerned about the spiritual well-being of others? There are some times that I sense in my own home, and many times it's at night, and I begin to pray, because I know they're there. And but this is the very place that Jesus meets us. When we are aware, when we are sensitive, and the enemy attacks. This is where he meets us. But if we're like numbed out and never focusing on the spiritual things, just the physical things, the problems of the everyday without being concerned with the spiritual, then, demons can have their way and we don't even know it. So again, to be sensitive to that reality. And Jesus shows that, of course, that he has control, that he is in charge. But we must be wholeheartedly committed, right? Embrace Jesus' authority over us. Or, here's what happens. When we do not submit to him, when we have our own ideas of how life is supposed to work, never mind what he said, I'm going to do my thing because I'm angry, because I don't see life working any other way, I have to do it my way, then our lives can be full of spiritual blindness. Spiritual blindness. And we're going to see this in this passage, by the way. I'm not just saying that. It's here in this passage. So the whole context here is about the supernatural. Natural and supernatural. Right? And we find that Jesus is in absolute control. And this section in Matthew, if I remember what I said, this section is about Jesus revealing himself to be the King of Kings. And he's going to show himself that I am the King. And look what I can do, right? So that's what we find here. And Jesus is moving into the satanic arena. Where he goes on the east side of the Sea of Galilee was the area of Gentiles. And obviously it was demon infested, because that's what we find. So, and what's all this? Jesus is training his disciples. And exactly what is Jesus doing? He is teaching his disciples about who he is. And that's what we ourselves need to grow. Who is this Jesus we believe in? Who is he really? I mean, we say the name of Jesus, we claim Jesus, but do we really know him? And so the disciples, Jesus was teaching his disciples about himself. But who is he? And so that's what we find. And Jesus has absolute power that extends to all the natural. All that's natural. The wind, the seas, everything. And it's just, if we were to allow ourselves to really let this penetrate our souls, it's just mind-boggling what happens in this passage. And of course, it calls for faith, right? Because, well, maybe some fairy tale. Maybe just, Matthew decided to throw that in there. No, this really happened. This really, really happened. And so the first thing is, of course, that he's going to show his disciples that he has absolute authority over nature. But how does he do it? And the way he does it is instructive for you and me. Because it's opposite of what we think. Right? Or maybe not opposite, but not the normal way we think of how he's going to teach us. Because look, remember in the previous passage, he has just shown authority over distance. He said, just go, The centurion said, look, you don't have to come to my house. Just say the word and over distance. I know what authority is. And he does it. It's like, wow. And so some disciples begin to follow him. And then he says, okay, I'm going to follow, but first let me go bury my dad. Jesus responds, let the dead bury the dead. Híjole. Somebody wanted to follow him. Why are you following me? You think you're going to get rich? The foxes have holes, the birds have nests, but the Son of Man doesn't have a place to lay his head. You sure you want to follow me? Hey, Jesus is not afraid to lose friends. You better follow me for the right reason. Right? And so he has absolute authority. After saying all that, you think, hey man, whoever follows after that is like, they better have some commitment. Because after hearing all that, let the dead bury the dead. You want to follow a guy like that? And the text says, look at what the text says. Verse 23. And when he got into the boat, the disciples followed him. This was after all that he said. So you think, okay, the disciples have committed to follow him, right? And what does the next verse say? No, how does the next verse start? Look at the next verse. I mean, the disciples committed. Oh man, this guy, I don't care how, this is rough. But he's the man. So they follow him. And right after in verse 24, and behold, there arose a great storm on the sea, so that the boat was being covered with the waves, but Jesus himself was asleep. Okay. You and I decide to follow Jesus, and all of a sudden this overwhelming stuff is going to kill us. Cancer comes in, divorce comes in, massive bills come in, problems with the spouse, problems with the children. I can't take it anymore. I'm going to die of a heart attack. Oh, chapter 1. So, I mean, hadn't they just decided to follow Jesus? And then, boom, a life-threatening storm. Jesus doesn't teach the way you and I would like for him to teach us. Life-threatening situation. That's where we get to know Jesus personally. You really want to know him? Get ready, man. Buckle your seatbelt. He's going to take you on a joyride. And then it says, did you see the last part of that verse? He was asleep. You ever feel like God's asleep on your situation? Hey, God, I'm drowning here. He was asleep. He was asleep. I mean, come on. If we're honest, sometimes we feel God is he real? Can't you see I'm dying here? He's snoring away. Isn't that amazing? I mean, again, and what was the whole deal? Jesus was going to teach them about himself. Not how to solve problems, not how to fix something. Fix the wife, fix the husband, fix the children, fix the business, fix whatever. No. It's about getting to know the King of Kings, you see. And to know him, he's going to put us through some situations that we're crying uncle and we're on our knees and maybe God doesn't know what he's doing. So what do? They go to the right source, right? They go to Jesus. I mean, it's right there in the text, verse 25. And they came to him and woke him up saying, save us, Lord, we are perishing. Apparently they had faith. Because after all that rough talk that Jesus, let the dead bury the dead. And you're not going to make money on me, man. And they still followed. They had faith. But their faith was weak. And their knowledge was limited. And so they needed a few things. And Jesus was going to say, you know what? I want to develop your faith. Not your lifestyle. Not your standard of living. Not your community status. No. I'm interested in your faith. That's what he's about, right? We're perishing. They had faith, but they needed to grow. They had knowledge, but they needed to grow. And that says all of us, really, all of us. And so they go to him and they said, why are you afraid, you men of little faith? Now, I don't think Jesus was rebuking them for the life-threatening situation. I think it was real. I think Jesus was saying, hey man, if you're with me, not even death should frighten you. Yeah. Because I am the King of all the universe. Even if you're facing death, fear should not paralyze you, should not panic you. And they were panicked. They were panicked. They had faith, but their faith was weak and little small. And their knowledge of him was lacking. And so even facing death, Jesus is saying, you men of little faith, even in death. Don't we read in Psalm 23? Though I walk through the shadow of the valley of death, I shall fear no evil. That's when we know God rather well, right? And so Jesus is teaching them. He's teaching them. Why are you afraid? Even if you are dying, you shouldn't panic like this. Don't you know you're with me? I see. The problem is you don't know me very well. Okay, he gets up after. That's what it says, right? Then, after he had rebuked them, then he gets up and rebukes. He rebukes the wind and the sea. I mean, you have to put a little thought into that. How do you think he did it? Shut up! Super calm. You gotta think about this. You're in South Padre. The wind started to come and the waves are getting massive. Who in the world could scream out and boom, super calm? I mean, I don't care what philosopher, what physicist, scientist, they see somebody do that at South Padre, like, shut up. I mean, just think of it. The wind and the storm, the waves were so big they were covering the boat. And he rebukes and the wind stops. And the whole sea becomes super calm. That's your king. My king. Do we know him that way? Or some tiny little thing happens in our lives and we just fall apart. What's our theology then? Is Jesus really king of the universe? No. I may know it up here, but down here, Jesus is nobody. Jesus is nobody. I have to fight and claw and cuss and try to push and control and manipulate and force. Because Jesus is asleep. That's what we're saying. That's what we're saying. But Jesus showed them that he's the king of all the natural universe. That even the winds obey him. It's amazing, right? Amazing. Be still, my soul. Thy God doth undertake to guide the future as he has the past. Thy hope, thy confidence, let nothing shake. All now mysterious shall be bright at last. Be still, my soul. The waves and winds still know him. His voice who ruled them while he dwelt below. The King of Kings rules over all nature. I suspect when he rebuked the wind and the sea, even the natural world said, the King of the universe has spoken. Be quiet. That's what we find there. And the men's response, which is usually we not even aware. We don't even come close to responding to the way we should respond. Look at what it says there in verse 27. The men were amazed. The word there, they were like dumbstruck, like Yeah. Totally just dumbfounded, couldn't even speak. They were amazed and said, "What kind of a man is this?" I suspect behind that question is like, is he a man? What kind of a man is this? That even the waves in the sea obey him. My. If we were to know Jesus that way, would we not smile at the future instead of having high blood pressure? Instead of having to take all kinds of pills to stabilize us? The men just wondered. They were at awe. The disciples were learning about whom this Jesus really was and is. None other than the almighty Lord of the physical universe. If the disciples were just learning, you and I need to learn about Jesus. Sometimes we need to maybe take a walk and say, Lord, help me, because I'm so tied to the physical. I'm so tied to my own puny little powers. I'm so limited by my puny knowledge that I have. And take walks and think about that. Let that sink in. And the disciples were, of course, having the knowledge of Jesus over the physical now, and now they're going to have knowledge of the Jesus' absolute authority over all spiritual. All the spiritual. And that's what we have next, right? Because they got into the boat and they went across to the east side, to the southeast side of the Sea of Galilee. The Gadarenes was the Gentile place. And, of course, they never got along with the Jews. The Jews always have problems with people. They didn't get along, and I suspect that having pigs was in your face, Jews. So when they came to the other side of the country of the Gadarenes, two men who were demon-possessed met him as they were coming. Two demon-possessed. Two demon-possessed. Demons are always wanting to be embodied. They want to possess so that they can consume. And consumption and destruction makes them feel good. It's kind of the same when you and I get mad and we just want to break something. And if we break something, that felt good. And evil progresses and progresses and progresses to the point of hurting somebody and destroying somebody. And that's how we end up stabbing each other. Because anger, and we think that's what's going to make us find justice. No, we're destroying ourselves and the very people we love. But anger blinds. And demons are the epitome of that, and of course, ultimately Satan. But that's what they live off of. Even dead bodies they will use. And so here they are, to demon-possessed, and it says, demon-possessed met him as they were coming out of the tombs, using dead bodies. They were so extremely violent that no one could pass by that way. Demons have so much power that they can actually disrupt travel. Think of that. But there they were, and they just wanted to possess, to consume, even dead. And I want you to note All this area was demon-infested area. By the way, demon infestation can be localized, right? Here in the valley, actually, there's a few spots that are known for having especially demonic influence and demonic infestation. Here it was localized. So we have to be aware of that. And they were extremely violent. They lived among the dead. And for the Jews, that meant uncleanness, right? A cemetery or place of the dead. It was uncleanness. You don't go there and touch tombs or whatever and then go worship. No, you have to go through purification, you know. And so the disciples might be like, where are you going, Jesus? Don't you know you're going to get stained? You're going to become unclean? No, I'm the king of all the universe, and I can correct things. And I'm going to infiltrate demon infestation areas because I am king. They needed to know that. They needed to know that. This demon-possessed coming out of the tombs. And here's another thing about demons. Verse 29. Look at this. And they cried out, saying, what business do we have with each other, Son of God? Demons have lots of knowledge. They know about Jesus. They know who he is, Son of God. Can you imagine if more people knew Jesus as the Son of God? The demons have knowledge, and they have more knowledge than you and I. They've been here for thousands of years. They've seen God at work. They've seen Satan at work. They've seen human relationships for thousands and thousands of years. Think about that. And Jesus is saying, I'm going to visit you. I'm going to go knock at your door. And the demon's like, why? Don't. Okay. You're the Son of God. Okay, if you're going to throw us out, man, at least send us to the pigs. Remember? They want to possess. And they can be human beings. And the next best thing is animals. And the next best thing is maybe other living things, plants. The next best thing is things. Omelets, whatever they can possess. Stones. People think that stones have magic. No, that's demonic. The broom. Oh, yeah. No. Demons. And so they have knowledge. And they have power. And they know Jesus. Have you come to torment before the time? I know at one point you're going to destroy us. You're going to send us to the pit. But in the meantime, come on. And so the demons began to entreat him, saying, if you're going to cast us out, and we know you are, send us into the herd of swine. We want to possess. We want to destroy. We want to destroy because that makes us feel good. That relieves some of the rage and vileness we want to express. And anytime you and I enter that realm, we're acting like demoniacs. They love that. And so, hey, send us to the swine. And he just tolerated them and said, go. Now, Jesus knew what he was doing, of course. This was going to cause a ruckus with the Gentiles, but the Gentiles were also going to get revelation, right? And at that revelation, they would have a choice. They would have a choice. And so, big on, of course, you know what happened. The pigs went into the sea and they all perished. So you think, okay, pigs. they made money for the Gentiles. They made money, right? And Jesus destroyed them because he told the demoniacs, the demons, they could go in there. So the herdsman ran away and went into the city and reported everything, including what had happened to the demoniacs. Okay? So first of all, the herdsman. Don't you think that the herdsman would have said, man, we know about these demoniacs, and this guy has the power to clean house? I don't care if he destroys the pigs, man. I need to know him. But no. There was a profound spiritual blindness. And when we don't want to submit to Jesus as king, I don't care. We might have 200 IQ. Spiritually blind as bats. They were blind. Instead of, man, breaking down and falling before Jesus, no, they ran and told the city. And then he told them about the demoniacs too. Doesn't the text say it? And what happened to the demoniacs? And at that point, the Gentiles just said, wow, this guy has that. And you know that the Gentiles knew about the demoniac because they were in the tombs. They were in that area. There was demon infestation. They knew, and Jesus had the power to take out the demons, the vile, evil spirits. But the blindness just gets more profound. More profound. And as this world continues to reject Jesus, what do you should expect? More lies and more corruption. That's all we can expect. We can't. I don't care who's in the White House. I don't care who, financially, whether we're going down or up or whatever. No, man. Spiritual blindness. And so this is what happened to them, right? And behold, the whole city came out to meet Jesus. And when they saw him, they implored him. Please leave. Can you imagine that? Telling Jesus that? Please leave. We see the power you have over evil spirits, but leave. How profound is that blindness? And the more time goes, the more I see people rejecting the things of the Lord. And they don't want to hear, plug in their ears. They don't want to hear about church. They don't want to hear about God. I've experienced that more and more in the past few years. The spiritual blindness is just getting more and more deeper. But Jesus what is he doing? He's training his disciples. Training his disciples in what? In the knowledge of who he is. Imagine the disciples after now, he rebuked the winds and the sea and it became calm, and now the demoniacs and then the people are like, what in the world? And they're seeing the blindness of people. Can you just think what was happening to the disciples at that point? They probably wanted to scream at the guardians, say, man, why? Don't you see who Jesus is? Again, Jesus' main point is like, now do you understand a little bit about who I am, disciples? I am king over all the natural world, and I am king over all spiritual realities. I am the King of Kings. But when there's spiritual blindness, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And that's why when we find someone, we might be related to that person. We may not. But they start rejecting the things of Jesus. Pray for them. Gently speak to them. But man, it has to be the work of the Holy Spirit to do what's needed, because we're talking profound blindness. So again, what had just happened? The disciples had committed to follow Jesus. They almost died in a storm, right? Life-threatening. And then demons confront them, and they're getting the knowledge of Jesus. Personal, first-hand knowledge. So, first thing is to say, realize. God is extremely interested in delivering us from the violence we experience in this life. He has sent his Son to deal with all and the greatest of all evil against us. I mentioned this before, that more and more young people are being brought to see me. And the horrendous suffering that's happening among our young people, it is just mind-boggling. And sometimes the parents are so overwhelmed and blind themselves, they don't know how to help the kids. You know, and you and I need to be aware that God is extremely interested in delivering us from this violent world. And he sent his Son to deliver us. So to draw near to God, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is the disciples were asked to strengthen their faith, no? O ye of little faith. So to ask the question in our own lives, is there an area in my life that I'm moving forward by faith? Or is it everything is calculated? I don't need faith. I've already calculated everything, and I know exactly where I'm going to go and why I'm going to do it. Faith has nothing to do with it. And of course, there are some things, right? I don't have to say now, in the morning, do I need to exercise faith to brush my teeth? Come on. No. But are there areas that we need to move forward by faith, trusting that God is going to be there with me, and take risks? Woo! Take risks? No, man. I got to be sure. Got to have all the logical arguments with me. And I got to make sure that the stock market is doing right before I make any move. As if the stock market is our Savior. How foolish. How foolish. I'm not saying to not use our brains and plan and so forth. Don't get me wrong. Don't get off. But are there any areas that you're moving forward by faith? Because that's what God is interested in. Oh, you of little faith. Did he not tell that to the disciples? You want to follow me? You really, really want to follow me? Buckle your seatbelts. You're going to have to exercise faith, and you're going to have to grow in faith. Because I'm not here to play games. I'm not here to play church. I'm not here to play Christianity. No, I'm here to strengthen your faith in me, because I am the King of Kings. We must be willing to step forward in faith. 2 Timothy chapter 1. 2 Timothy chapter 1. Says this. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. For God has not given us a spirit of timidity, but of power and love and discipline. You know, and again, this is a reality in our days. Everybody's so afraid. My goodness. And the pandemic showed the reality, right? And all of a sudden, everybody was like, somebody would say, you're supposed to do this. You're supposed to do that. You're supposed to do that. Like, I don't use my brains, man. I just want to follow. because I'm so afraid. And people are paralyzed. They can't even make a decision. They're so afraid. Unbelievable. But God has not given us a spirit of timidity, but of power and love and discipline. Again, don't go off. I'm not saying be foolish and do whatever. But man, if your fear is what drives you, man. And here's what I've seen too. That fear is passed on from generation to generation. It's amazing. Amazing to me. That, a whole family is like, they're afraid. Why? And I look at mom and dad and they're so afraid of everything. Panic attacks or what have you. Like fear. It's like, my goodness. God has not given us a spirit of timidity, but of power and of love and discipline. Then verse 8, therefore, do not be ashamed of the testimony of the Lord or of me, his prisoner, but join with me in suffering. That's what the text says. I'm not making it up. See there? Right there? Join me in suffering for the gospel according to the power of God. Knowingly that I'm going to suffer. Anybody want to volunteer? That's what it says there. Join me in suffering. Does it not say there in the text? Oh man, but fear. Nah. Jesus says, oh, you have little faith. And that happened right after they committed to following him. Once again, what God is interested in, right? In developing us. I mean, if he was interested in developing our finances, our checkbook, our bank account, he could just snap a finger and that'd be done. That's not what he's interested in. That's what you and I may be interested in, not him. And guess who's going to win? Step forward by faith, man. That's what this passage calls us to. And then, the last application, don't miss it. To be at awe at who Jesus is. To be just this mysterious God. He's able to rebuke the winds and the sea, and they obey him. Is he really alive? Really? He's right here with us? This man that can yell and the winds obey him in the sea? Wow. To be at awe. But that means we need to let that penetrate. We need to spend time in meditation and let that sink in. Right? So that we can be in appreciation and worship and appropriate his holiness and his love and his power to our lives. Living under King Jesus. That's going to mean that I'm going to respond very differently when life doesn't go according to Ruben Martinez. Life doesn't go according to put your name in there. How we respond in life, it should be very different if we're saying Jesus is really King of my life. King of all that is. And appropriate that, apply that. Right? Because power over evil, per Jesus, that's not the problem at all. Right? The demons knew about Jesus. The people knew about Jesus' power and sovereignty, but they refused him. It's not a matter about intelligence. It's not a matter about information. It's a matter of whether the heart we're going to choose to believe and submit or not. That's the question. Because it's right there in the text. God has already spoken. God has already revealed. It's up to us. What are we going to choose? And Jesus is revealing to the disciples and to all of us that he really is the King of Kings, King of all the universe. Will you allow him? Not that you make him king, he's already king. But will you acknowledge and allow him to be that king in your life or not? And be at awe. Be just worshiping of him.
So let my life be